So let's talk about philanthropy and entrepreneurship and sort of where you see those two sort of things overlap.
So, in some sense, to me, doing well by doing good is my philosophy. That means you can create a great venture, and if the venture can do good, that becomes a philanthropic venture from my perspective. So, to me, you can't create a $10 billion company by solving a $1 billion problem. That means you have to go out and solve a $100 billion problem. And it so happens those $100 billion problems are massive social problems, which are education, the healthcare, the clean water, the energy. And if you can go provide access to education and healthcare to billions of people around the world, and if you happen to make $1 billion profit, my hat's off to you. That's a great venture, and that's what we want people to do, is not to separate becoming doing well from doing good, because you can do both, and that's how you create scalable, sustainable change.
Earlier, Melinda Gates was mentioning that even with all the combined amount of money that we have here at the Forbes 400 Philanthropy Venture or Summit or whatever we're calling it, if everybody gave it all away, it would only be a drop.
Yes.
That you can't solve these massive problems: healthcare, clean water, education, poverty, by giving money away. You have to leverage your skills and your brains.
That's actually is right. So, most of the people somehow feel making a pledge to give the money somehow is what is going to make the change. I believe that's not what it is. If you look at the people who are successful, the reason they are successful is because they have developed a certain skills. The best thing you can ask them is to give their time. Instead of asking them to give half their money, if they can make a pledge to give 30% of their time, the world would be a better place. So if you think about an entrepreneur or a venture capitalist going out and using the same skills to make a great social change, that's much more meaningful than giving away the $100 million, because it's really easy to give money. Writing a check is the easiest thing a successful person does. Giving their time is what's the hardest thing, and ask for it.
So we were talking before we started filming a little bit about certain types of ventures that are perhaps they're philanthropy, but there maybe are not. There may be somewhat of a selfish philanthropy in the sense that you're just sort of, you're doing the easy thing. You're creating a school, but then you're going to put it the Michael Noor School on it, or whatever. And that doesn't seem to be something that's really going to solve the big problems.
So Mike, I came from a very, very poor background. We had no food to eat, and we came to this country with absolutely nothing. And I'm a living American dream. God has been so kind to us, and the easiest thing I could have done was to say, I'm going to go back to the villages I lived in, and there were no schools, so I'm going to build a school there. There was no hospital, so I'm going to build a hospital there. In fact, I'll be so generous, I will build them in 10 different villages. But that would have made me feel really good. But there are billions of people who have no access to education and healthcare. I don't want to do a feel-good philanthropy. I'm going to go out and use my skills to say, why do we really need the schools? Can we actually develop a software that can be as effective as a private tutor? Not just a school system, as a private tutor, and as addictive or as engaging as the most addictive video game. And if you are able to do that, you'll be able to take that education system to around the world and impact billions of people. That means you have to think about the solution very differently when you're trying to impact 1 billion people rather than impacting 100 people. Same type of thing in healthcare. As opposed to building hospitals, what if you can use a $25 tablet device and put a software and the sensors, so a village girl now can create a business charging 10 cents or 15 cents per patient, and now able to diagnose most common diseases better than the doctor. Now, as opposed to getting abused, she becomes a village doctor. And imagine now you have access to healthcare to billions of people by simply using the innovation and entrepreneurship. So my big thinking from my side is, there is not a problem that's large enough that innovation and entrepreneurship can solve. And I'm so fortunate to be here at the Forbes Summit, because Forbes is in a perfect place to bring these innovators and entrepreneurs and use the capitalism to change the world. And it is, I'm so glad that Forbes is finally doing this.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you here. So you're a big believer in technology. You might be called a techno-utopian to some extent. You involved in the X Prize. You're involved in Singularity University. What can Let's just talk about education for a second, a little bit more. What can teachers learn from video games? Kids will play video games for hours, and certainly, but if you put the word educational in front of it, it's all of a sudden they're shooting down 8s and they're starting to add them up. It seems like the approach has been sort of fundamentally wrong.
That's right. So I think, in some sense, the educational games are not entertainment games. So it has to be, the games really have to be games, and education needs to come out of it. And also I think our whole education system is so wrong, because we are still designed and teach the people like we in the industrial era. So industrial era, two things happened. One is that you could learn a certain skill and use that for the rest of your life. In today's world, where the technology is growing exponentially, any skill that you learn becomes obsolete. And secondly, the facts that we used to teach are now available on everybody's cell phone. So why do we have to teach facts? We have to teach them learning to learn. And the reason our education system doesn't work is we still batch them, and we treat the education system like an assembly line. An assembly line means you have these stations where you have experts to tighten the wrench. What do? We batch our children based on date of manufacturing. You're 10-year-old, you're 11-year-old, and then you go from station to station, and the experts comes and teaches you, and there is no adaptability, because some children learn experimentally, some people learn conceptually. Why not group them that way? What if some people, and as opposed to having a fixed time variable learning, what if you had a fixed learning variable time? That means you can't go to level 2 unless you pass level 1. So you have to really start to also incorporate the things that video games do well, which is the action and the reward have to be close together, and which is what releases the dopamine. You have to start taking advantage of how brain learns, and take advantage of a lot of the neuroscience approach, how to get the oxytocin to get released, so you have a bonding and the learning experience. How do you get the dopamine to get released so you feel that you want to continue doing that? So there are a lot of the learnings from the neuroscience we can adapt to make education system not only effective but very engaging.
So what would be the one, if you're going to pick one technology that you think could have the biggest impact on the world's poor? Would it be a cheap tablet, a really cheap tablet that everybody could use? Or is there some other, I'm talking more high technology, not just clean water or whatever.
Sure. So if you can somehow get a device in people's hand, so if I can get a $10 tablet device, that can change the world, because now you can use that for diagnosis of diseases, you can use that for education, you can use that for almost all types of things, because at the end of the day, the gap that you need to convert the infrastructure problem into the knowledge gap, and almost 90% of the social problems are the knowledge gap problems. And if you can find them a device that you can deliver knowledge, and not only is a one-way system, you can now use their ideas. For the first time, if you do that, the billions of people who never had a voice and their ideas being heard, now they can they can participate in idea generation. So they are not only the consumer of information, they are also become the producer of information, and that's how you change the world.